Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Health Ignited. I'm here with the woman I'm here with every week, which is Dr. Sonia Jensen. How are you today?
I'm good. How are
Good.
you?
I'm good. I always ask you that question. You've never said.
I never said I'm good.
What do you usually say?
I just usually say hello.
Okay.
And then we move on.
Well, it's important to ask how we're doing because the
It's
talk today is all about relationship
Yes.
intention and attention and connection.
Mhm.
And we have two of our most radiant favorite people here joining us today, Tommy Rosen and Kia Miller. And we're going to get into how we know them, but they've been hugely influential in my life, especially Tommy. I've got a chance to get to know him over the last number of years. But these people are absolute world changers. They're so lovely to be around. And actually, it wasn't until I was away at a retreat with Tommy, and he was talking to Kia on the phone. And I'll never forget this, but Tommy, you were so sweet with Kia on the phone. I'm like, oh my God, there's other men in this world that speak so lovingly to their wives and are not afraid to speak in that kind of loving nature. And I said, like, wow, I loved hearing you speak to your wife in that way. So really what I want this conversation to be about today is really that, like, how do we bring more love into these loving relationships? And because the world that we're in, we're so surrounded by our external stressors in the relationship for ourselves to our community, a relationship with ourselves to our country, to the world, and all these relationships that are so big and profound that we don't know what to do with those heavy emotions that get stirred as a result of them. And so we want to anchor back into self. So Tommy Rosen is a leader and mover and shaker in the world of Recovery 2.0, and Kia Miller of Radiant Body Yoga. Massive influence and so much heart. So that was my long-winded introduction. Love you guys, and thank you so much for being here.
So happy to be here. Thank you. So beautiful to see your radiant faces.
Yeah, and those of you that aren't watching, like, you should see their aura and their radiance. It's like as soon as the screen came on, it's like you get this hit of like, okay, we want to be better, so that we can match their vibration, because their vibration is so high.
Yeah, totally. Well, let's jump right in, because Tommy being the master of addictions and recovery, and there's so many different types of addictions that are out there. But really today we want to talk about the relationship of addiction, which is codependency. Tommy, can you sort of like paint that picture for the listeners of what that is?
Thank you so much. And it's an incredible joy to be with you guys as always, and to reflect upon these very important, very, very core challenges and puzzle pieces to this life. We're talking about relationship. When you talk about codependency, we're talking about relationship. And it begins, well, it's supposed to begin with relationship with self. And so if all healthy relationships begin with healthy relationship with self, it would be impossible, really, to have a healthy, well-grounded, loving, present relationship if you're not healthy, well-grounded, loving, and present with yourself. It just would not be possible. So when we speak about an intimacy disorder like codependency, intimacy, into me, you see, I'll let you see me, you let me see you, and we'll develop that depth of connection over time. That comes from me being willing to look inside of my own self. Into me you will see. So I have to say that to myself. I have to look into my own self, my own situation first. And I know for myself that as a child and an adolescent and a young adult, I did not do that. I was not skillful at that. I was not really putting my effort into learning about me, developing a relationship with myself. And I would say that my childhood was spent in movement. I mean that literally, like hyperactivity, athletics, kinetic movement, always moving. And people used to say, my parents or teachers used to say, you can't sit still for 5 minutes, and that was true. What I didn't realize until much later was I was choosing not to sit still for even 5 minutes, because to sit still with myself, I would have to face something that I was very, very frightened of, which was a sense of something being wrong. Although I wouldn't have been able to tell you what it was. There was something inside that always felt that it was just off center. And I refer to that general feeling as anxiety. It wasn't the kind of anxiety where your whole life immediately implodes, or you have a severe mental health issue where it has to immediately be treated. It wasn't that kind of anxiety. It was a low level, constant nagging. Something's wrong. Like an itch that you can never really scratch. You're aware of it. You can't get to it. You don't know what it is or where it came from. It's just your baseline. How I knew myself was as baseline anxiety. So I was scared to look. It grows in power over time. The longer you don't look, the more dangerous or frightening it seems. Like, the boogeyman. It's the boogeyman coming to get you. And what we know about the boogeyman is once you face the boogeyman, you realize it really wasn't even what you had imagined. It wasn't anything as bad as what your mind could have dreamed up. But I spent the first half of my life really running from that. And the running from that meant I was running from me. So I never got to know myself. I didn't get to know what was behind that wall of anxiety. And so that's how my life went. And it's easy to understand why I made choices around substances, drugs, alcohol, that would make me feel better, even temporarily, from that sense of anxiety. So that codependency you asked about, Nikki Myers, a friend of ours, describes it as the disease of the lost self. And in my case, I wasn't lost. I don't know that I had ever been found. I had never found myself or developed that relationship. So I had that disease of the lost self as far back as I can remember. And so I carried it into my childhood. I carried it into my adolescence and my young adulthood, and it affected every area of my life and every relationship in my life. And so I'm looking back from 53 years old, being able to say some of these things to you with some modicum of clarity. But that's not the way it was, even when I was, say, 43 or 33, or certainly not 23. So I hope that begins to open up a conversation. I'm sure Kia will have some things to say about that.
Definitely. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think I love how you bring it back to the self and bring it back to also our childhood. And as a woman coming into the world, I think there's a little bit of a difference of this different knowing, because one thing that I've come to understand is like we're carrying this lineage in our ovaries the moment that we're conceived. So there's this other connection that kind of keeps women and young girls grounded that's a little bit different than young men. And now both of us have two little boys, so I'm always kind of analyzing what's going on in their world and how we can navigate relationship for them. I mean, not navigate it for them, but guide them to understand themselves better. So Kia, I would love to hear from your perspective of being a woman in this world. And because I think as humans, all we want is belonging and connection. And the work that I've done with studying like oxytocin, and if we don't receive that in our beginning years with that nurturing from whether it's our mother or our village and our community, we tend to lose that innate connection that's already there. So I'm just curious if you've had that experience yourself, or with the work that you do with others, and if you've seen that be different than maybe what men go through versus women, or if you feel like it's innately the same.
Oh, that's such a good question, and it's so interesting because in my work, I've never really focused on the difference between male and female. I think my focus is so much on the spiritual journey and the sort of unveiling of the layers of conditioning wherever they're coming from, to access that kind of deeper seat of self. And so I actually haven't ever focused on that particular area, although I think it's a fascinating one. Yeah, my focus is just, as a human being, we're subject to all of these conditions, ancestral, familial, cultural, astrological, and how do we unwind from all of that so we can access the true source of our power.
Yeah, that's awesome, because I mean, it's sort of in the name of your yoga too, radiant body, right? Like the radiant body isn't male, female. It's that human energy system that makes us all human. And that's the energy that binds us or unites us. So I love that. On this topic of, I want your people and our people, all of our people, to essentially appreciate I think the relationship dynamic that happens when entering into a relationship with someone who has been on a journey of recovery. So I'd love to, like, maybe Kia, if you can share, did you have hesitation? Was there concerns? I mean, we're making this very literal on the level of relationship, but I think it's an important one, because I think people, when they see someone who's moved through some big stuff in their life, was there hesitation? Was there stress? Was there worry when you entered into this relationship with this beautiful man here next to you?
I'm laughing. We're laughing. It's such a fun question, and there's that saying that people say that you tend to get into relationship with the person who kind of represents the dysfunctional relationship that you had with your parents, whichever one of your parents, in my case, it happened to be my mother. There was addiction in her life. But the funny thing is that the more significant relationship that I had before Tommy was with an absolute addict of the furthest extreme, and I didn't even recognize it when I went into that relationship. I was just naive. And so when it came to Tommy, he's sober, he'd been on the path for a long time. So in a way, when we got into relationship, it was definitely a step up for me. And right away, I learned so much from him because of his 12-step work and his capacity to be so honest, and also his real capacity to be intuitive and to reflect what he sees, so that I couldn't just hide and sweep things under the carpet like I had done my whole life, as I'd learned. And so we had a very honest relationship from the beginning, a very accountable relationship from the beginning. And even though there was still some stuff going on, that itself, I think, created the capacity for what we have now, because we started there. And his intuitive capacity and desire to stay in communication just never let me off the hook. And I didn't always like it, but it was really good for me. It was really good for me to learn how to match that and show up and go into the fire of the uncomfortable moments in relationship where you really just don't want to show up. You'd rather close the door and, stew on it a little bit and make it worse. And then sweep it under the carpet for a later date when, something small happens and all of a sudden a volcano explodes. Like, that's what I was used to.
Oh, we don't know what that's about at all.
Never. Well, Tommy, I'd love to hear it on your perspective too. So like, we talked about someone coming into a relationship with someone who's been through recovery, or, there's always this unknown, like, are they going to spiral down again?
Yes.
For you being on the other side, what's that relationship like when you're ready for healthy relationship with yourself and long enough so that you can be able to be there in commitment to someone else?
Yes.
What was that like for you?
Yeah, well, I'd like to start by saying I'm shocked to hear that Kia was with someone before me. The first time I'm hearing that. I mean,
this is what these podcasts are for.
We met at the tender age of, 33 years old, and to hear that she had dated someone previous to me, it's upsetting. It's frankly.
Good thing you guys have the right tools now to navigate forward.
Yes. Good to have it out now. Well, to answer your question seriously, I really had no idea that I was capable of having a marriage when Kia and I got married. I knew, I've told this story before, it won't be news to Kia, but I knew that on the morning that we wrote our vows together. We were in Yosemite National Park. It's the morning of our wedding. We had 5 other people with us. We'd kind of done a semi-eloping kind of thing. And we sat opposite each other, writing our vows, and I knew in my mind was really messing with me. My mind was, saying, you are going to come face to face with yourself in this marriage. You are not going to be able to escape yourself. You're going to reach a day where the things that are hard for you are going to surface. And that's a difficult place to be on the morning that you're going to marry somebody, because it brings up doubt. Will I be able to navigate my personal challenges? Because I'm absolutely in love with this woman. I absolutely want to be here and I want to go through this. But inside those voices, what are you going to do on those days when the aspects of you that are hard to navigate a relationship rear their head? How will you be at that time? And so I say to people, I was 99% sure of what I was doing the morning I was getting married. and let me tell you, like, as they say in recovery, 99% is hell. It's absolutely hell. That 1% gets in the way of everything. We went outside and we laid down a blanket by the Merced River in Yosemite. Kia was not there yet. She was with her maid of honor, her best friend. And we waited for them to show up, and out they came from behind a tree. And Kia, and I say this sincerely, she is so beautiful to me to this day. Same thing as it was that day. Really, exactly the same. And she came out from behind that tree and was walking with the biggest smile on her face. She was walking with that smile to a life with me. And I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it. I literally was humbled. So humbled. And in that moment, 99% became 100. And I knew that whatever comes, I'm going to have to take it one day at a time. I'm going to get support. I'm going to be open to that support, and I'm going to learn how to be in a marriage. And when I met my life teacher, Guru Prem, he delivered this line to me. I said, Guru Prem, recently I had a wedding. And he looked at me and he said, well, Tommy, any monkey can have a wedding. But for you to have a marriage, you are going to need help. And I said, yes. Yes, I am. Absolutely. I'm going to need all the help I can get. And that openness and that willingness to listen and take pointers and to learn and to grow as a human being, as a man, has been indispensable in us relating to one another, staying intimate, staying connected, staying current. So, with regards to addiction, I was not done with what I call the frequency of addiction, which still ran through my body and still ran in my mind. I still struggled around gambling and money. I still struggled with cigarettes. I still struggled with all of the women stuff and girl stuff that I grew up with. And so I had a lot of work to do. But Kia and I were really well suited to navigate those waters together. Her from her side, me from my side. And we've worked, presently and lovingly over the years to navigate whatever came up.
Thank you for sharing that. It's such a beautiful story. And it just, you can see the love between the two of you, and more so you guys can see the respect that you have for each other, and even in how you show up for everybody else in the world. Like, both of you influence so many lives, and you can see that you give each other the space to do that and can come together. And so my question for you, Kia, would be, how do you navigate that piece in a relationship when you have this thing that you want to share with the world that may be different than your partner, because you guys are sharing this openness with the world and helping people navigate through their lives, but in different and unique ways. So how do you keep yourself centered to do that without losing yourself in maybe your partner's journey?
Gosh, that's such a good question. I think I have two parts to that. And the first one is my own practice, my sadhana, my spiritual practice that keeps me connected to myself. Like, that's the biggest rock of my day. That if I can get that in and create that I think of it as into me, I see the intimacy. If I can create that in the morning and really set my frequency and vibration, then I'm capable of really walking my path in a solid way, supportive with Tommy and not being influenced either way. So that's number one. And then number two, in the beginning of our relationship, people very quickly made it the Tommy and Kia show. And so we were asked to do things all the time together. And that very quickly, to me, I recognized that was not a healthy way to go. It was creating different levels of power imbalances, and it just wasn't healthy in the beginning. And so I made a very clear decision that I wanted to focus on my own thing. And Tommy was focusing on his own thing. And then we could grow parallel, but in full support. He's taught me so much about business that I've been able to bring into everything that I do. He's done all of my teacher trainings. And so he brings all of that into what he does. And so it's just been a really beautiful way where we recognize each other and we support each other, but there's enough autonomy that that I really get to express my creativity and my passion in what I do, and he gets to express it in what he does, and then we come together in certain moments to co-create things. But I think that the general emphasis is on just supporting one another, so that whatever it is that we want to do, that the other one is in full support. Yeah.
It's awesome. Tommy, I'd love to hear your thoughts too.
Yeah. So what comes up for me, which I think would be valuable for me to state and might be useful, is that the first thing that Kia mentioned was her practice. And I'd be the first to say that her discipline and her devotion to that practice is unshakable. There are things in my life that are also unshakable, but there are days when I miss that practice. And when I do, I recognize that it doesn't quite go as clearly. Let's just say there's an unsteadiness that one can create without that practice. So I've learned that unbelievable gift from Kia, and also from my own experience with diligence or missing. My personality this is really, really sort of personal, but I don't mind sharing it. My personality, for this to work between me and Kia and I have to really work on my stories and the way those stories lead into expectation. So if Kia were to say, I need to get up and do my practice, and I say, well, stay with me. The 8-year-old boy, stay with me. And then she goes, no, I really need to do my practice. Okay. So there's a moment there for that 8-year-old boy to step into 53-year-old shoes, or to remain in the place of the 8-year-old boy. The 8-year-old boy has a story, and out of that story of incompleteness, like I shared with you earlier, in that story of anxiety, in that story of not enough, it's not enough, I'm not enough, the story that comes out of that is one of, insecurity or codependency, and it sets up an expectation. The expectation is, well, I expect, or I count on you being here if I ask you to be. The truth is that Kia will be here anytime I need her to be. And there's also a balance as we walk through normal life. That my expectation of, well, but what about me, isn't coming from presence. It's coming from a very old, incomplete, untrue story. That doesn't necessarily alleviate some of the difficult feelings that come up when that story arises. So my work is to see it and catch it and not pin that on Kia. Now, obviously we have a functional relationship and we each have needs from the other, and we do want to, compromise and come together healthily to meet each other's needs and to be loving and connected. That's all true. And that's sweet. And there's so much sweetness, obviously, between us. But I notice that when I come from the unconscious, or from the old story, or from the past, it doesn't go so well. Not just in Kia's reaction to expectation, but it just doesn't feel good to be in that space. So in that moment, I have choices. I can release the old story. I can look at the old story. And by the way, I can get up out of bed and get into my practice, which is where I come back to presence, come back to my own power, and come back to myself. But what I'm trying to bring up for anybody who's watching, who's in a long-term relationship, or who's ever struggled, in relationship to anybody is, to me, this is what my teacher was talking about. This is what I was worried about at the beginning of my marriage was, oh, you're going to have to face yourself in some pretty honest and profound ways. And as I sit here telling you about this, it's not a point of shame for me. It's a point of joy for me that I understand myself, my stories, my expectations, my mechanisms to this level, because this is what it has taken for someone like me to get to be in a relationship with someone like this. This is what it takes, is that level of introspection, the study of my own life, which is part of our belief system together as a couple. We believe that's important. And, it's part of yoga in action, is that swadhyaya, that self-study, the turning the gaze inward. And so me turning the gaze inward has shown me a couple things about myself that I have to be open and humble enough to see and then to work on that. And when I do, like, Kia really appreciates that and notices that, and there's a harmony and there's an energy that opens up. Now, it's not for me to ever call out what Kia's expectations are, the work that she has to do on herself. That's for her. But I will say, for the sake of the audience, that of course each of them brings an ego to a relationship. Each of them brings their ideas, their expectations, their history, their family, their perspective to the relationship. And so I just think what I thought on that first day, on our wedding day, that I'm going to face myself, I think everybody has to do that in relationship if you're choosing that. You can also choose a life of not being in a marriage or a partnership like that. You still have to face yourself in different ways. But within the context of a relationship, everybody has to do this. And I always hope, my prayer for anybody is, see beyond the immediate sensation, the intoxication, and the chemicals of new love. And understand that, take it from people who've been there, and understand that a relationship is like a shifting environment through time as you shift and your partner shifts, and it's unpredictable. And the commitment is just to show up for it. That's it. That's the commitment. It's not, I'll show up if I like it. I'll show up if it unfolds nicely. It's no, I'm just going to show up, and we'll see what happens each day. Does that make sense for you?
Too much sense. Well, it's funny because, I'm reflecting back to when Sonny and I first got together, and I just saw this exotic, gorgeous, sweet woman. And I remember thinking, and I'm glad you brought this up about lust versus love, because I want to ask you about that. I was so involved in my feelings for this amazing woman that I remember saying, I don't know how I could ever be upset with her. There's no way. Like, she's just too incredible. And I feel like too lucky of an individual. And it's just so funny, like you said, like the emotional chemistry that you're stuck in this place of reverence for this other perfect person. And you get so much feeling from the other person that you think it's, otherworldly. And then at some point people realize that, oh, we have to face our shit. And what I wanted to ask you guys is, like, sort of in this journey from lusting to love and authenticity and whatnot, there's a place where you start having a dialogue with yourself where you go, like, I'm acting like a total jackass here. I'm really screwing this up. I can see myself in the process of doing this and recognizing that this isn't serving anybody. So when you said you just have to show up too, I think that also takes a bit of pressure off people, because there's no like manual for how to do that or how to pay attention to those emotions. And then this is, that's step one. So this is step two or what have you. How do you cultivate a little bit more of that space in that transition. Hopefully this is making sense, but when you're feeling those feelings, that toxic feeling, what are some tools that maybe you guys use to help bring your clarity back to self? Because it can be this emotional roller coaster that you can wander down for some people. It may take days to come back, but what are some of your tools in that moment when you're feeling that soup of challenge?
Ooh. The way that I've learned to do it, well, it's two ways. I'm a slower processor than Tommy is. He processes things much faster. I need to take a little space sometimes. But I've learned not to take too much space. But sometimes I just need to back off for a moment and just be with myself. Not avoid, but just be present and be willing to dig a little about, okay, why did I react that way? Why do I feel this way? Why am I angry right now? What got triggered in me? And that process of self-reflection allowed me to start to see what the correction is. And usually what happens is, if I can just sit and really be present with it, then the kindness and the compassion and the love for the other person starts to rise up in me. And then I just trust myself, and I just feel that urge to go and connect. And I just trust it, and I go connect, so that a new level of conversation can happen. Mm. And I would just say, because I hadn't even thought about this before, but since we've been talking, it came into my consciousness. It's so easy to walk away from a relationship. It's just so easy to do that. We've all done that. And I never went past 18 months with anybody before I got married. And here we are 20 years later. But it's just so easy to walk away. And yet I feel like our love as a couple grows in relationship to our own self-love. And so the more time I've spent getting to know myself and digging away and cultivating self-compassion and self-love, and really starting to understand the complexity of what it is to be a human being. So when I mess up, either in my life or directly in my relationship, it's just to be present with that. And what I've noticed is that the more love that I generate within my own being for my own experience, that love just, it gets exponentially bigger in relationship with Tommy, because I feel like I relate to that, the love within him that's not emotional love, it's not temporary love, it's like an eternal love. It's like a frequency of love that he holds with his huge heart. And so the more I get to clarify myself, the more I get to relate to that part of him. And then all the little things that might annoy us about one another, it's so irrelevant, and it can be part of the humor of being in relationship. And all the little like neuroses and things that we each have, we get to laugh at, and we laugh a lot, and we laugh at those things, and I think it's so helpful. So that even in the midst of something very intense, sometimes the humor will be there, and it just helps to dissipate. So that's at least some of the insight that was coming from me as we opened up this conversation.
Awesome. Tommy? And we'd love to hear from you too. So what are your tools to navigate that moment? That moment, yeah.
Well, it's always, gosh. So just the other day, I was getting clear on my, like if someone said to you, what's your core belief. A core. What's your core belief? Someone asked me, a very powerful and wise person actually asked me that the other day. And it came sort of, I wasn't ready to answer that question, even though I think about that question all the time and experience it. What's my core belief? So it took about 20 minutes for me to finally get to my answer for me. And it was something that I have heard and was taught that became ingrained in me and has become a belief system. And it is trust God, clean house, serve others. And so that's my core belief. It rings true for me and many others who I've spoken to over the years about that. But it needs unpacking, like a lot of unpacking, because trust God, right there, you've lost a lot of people who don't necessarily understand what I mean when I say that. Clean house, what are you talking about? Okay, serve others, I got that part. All right, I understand that. So it requires a lot of unpacking. But the point is that if I trust that things are actually unfolding the way they are supposed to be, even with all the challenges, all the pain, and all the difficulty, that from a absolute divine perspective, there's an unfolding going on that I'm not responsible for, but I'm part of it. If I believe that, then when I come to the moment you're asking me about, the point is for me to see what is taking place in order so that I can learn something about what's being offered, because it's difficult, it's frustrating, it's maybe painful, frightening. And my job is not to see myself as a victim ever, but to see myself as a person who is empowered to make choices and to exercise free will, which I strongly believe in, within the context of a divine container. And that by making wise choices, I can move towards, in myself, peace and awareness and consciousness. So I go from a person who feels like it's happening to me to a person who feels like it's happening for me. And then finally, a person who feels like it's happening through me. And at that point, when I'm at that level of awakeness in that moment, then the challenge becomes food for and fuel for the next awakening that I'm about to have, which is beyond the current challenge. There will be other challenges there, but it's an unfolding, it's an evolution, and in that evolution I can reach that next level of understanding and be there, or here, rather than operating here where that challenge still takes place. So it's a here, this more expanded level, that particular challenge doesn't take place anymore, because it's been learned from and processed through and looked at, and then finally, after being looked at and really worked with, then it's transcended. So that's that process of evolution, which that very difficult moment provides the opportunity for. And the only reason I can say that is because we've been through it in difficult moments enough times to see what happens when you fight the moment and complain and blame and stay stuck in that difficult moment, versus when you take a moment like what Kia said and say, all right, I am triggered here. Let's just start there. I am triggered. Why? What is happening here for me? Why am I so angry, frightened, sad, lonely? What's coming up here? And then you learn. And one doesn't just learn by themselves. One learns by picking up the phone and calling loving and wise counselors, teachers, friends who can help reflect where you're at. And that's when we get to the conversation about sacred community, the Sangha that we all so desperately need, especially now. In order to, like, I remember, and we see this a lot when people get married. Often the person presiding over the wedding says to everybody in the community, like, will you support this couple? And I can speak from my perspective that I feel deeply supported by my teachers in this relationship and by our loved ones and our friends who I sincerely believe want us to succeed. And so that carries weight for us. And it's important not to forget that aspect of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think what you said there is key. Both of you spoke about trust. And when I hear the word trust, I also hear the word surrender, and really surrendering into the opportunity and what life is bringing for us. So how do we navigate that surrender and that trust when you're going through a pandemic, or when these external things in your life aren't necessarily working the way you thought life was going to happen, and you're a mother and you're a wife, and I'm talking about myself now, and you're a teacher and a doctor, and you're doing all these things. So how do you support yourself in unraveling these stories, because our responses are coming from that story that we've held from our traumas and our experiences and from our upbringing. And then now here's this global thing where our global community is going through something. So we have an external force telling us that we can't leave our homes, or we can't have somebody else come into your home to give you that support or give you that community. So what can we do to still stay in that space of surrender and that space of trust?
I feel like my answer is always the same, but what I've experienced and what I've witnessed as the light of this pandemic is that it has encouraged those who already have a proclivity toward practice. It has encouraged those people to actually go inside and to start to do some of the work and take advantage of the stillness to begin to peel off those layers. Having said that, that's easy coming from somebody like myself. We're in a relationship and there's no children around, and there aren't all those responsibilities, and going through a pandemic with 2 small children at home and the demands on that. And I think that's where just the support of friends, whether it's phone or FaceTime, and the Zoom thing. No wonder the Zoom thing just took off so hugely, and families probably having more FaceTime, so to speak, than ever before. And what a great gift that has been. Yeah, but I understand, and I've heard it from all my friends who have small children, just it's really challenging to be an isolated family in a globally isolated time, because as family units we feed so much off of one another. So I think that's a unique challenge in and of itself, and I bow to you, Sonia, or the both of you, for all the work that you've clearly been doing through this time with yourselves, individually with each other, but also holding that space for children. And so then almost that becomes the practice, doesn't it? Being able to be in that non-reactive present moment, the trustful surrender, that you can just do the best you can do in the moment that you're doing it. And then the last thing I'll just say on that is, I feel like the greatest teaching I ever got was, I'll do better next time.
Mm,
Just
I
the
love that.
recognition
So
of
good.
like, wow, I just, that really wasn't an optimal moment. I'm gonna do better next time. So there's no beating oneself up. There's just cutting that cycle that can be so detrimental, and just stepping forward and recognizing, okay, got it, moving on, not gonna beat myself up, I think. I feel like that has served me so much over the years. Yeah.
I love that.
Those are very powerful words. Very powerful. It's great.
So we're getting close to an hour, and I know you got lots of stuff going on. I want you guys to tell a little bit about your upcoming retreat, some of the stuff that you guys are doing to support people. I want to make sure that we share all of that so people can access you both separately together. But tell us about the upcoming retreat. Like, what happens in Costa Rica? And because you guys are both going together, this is a united front, right?
It is, but what we decided to do because of the uncertainty of these times was that we're not taking a group this year. We just decided not to do live events. There's just so much responsibility that comes with that, and there's so many complications to getting on a plane right now that holding that space for many people just wasn't something that we decided that we would take on this year.
Tell them about your program.
Well, it's funny because last year when we were this close to going, we were launching a new business at the time. And we're like, oh shoot, we really need to get there. And so we're gonna have to wait until next year too to join you guys. But I mean, these are immersive settings that you guys are taking people through, and they're going through so much healing. And so on that sort of topic of getting away, obviously right now is a unique situation. But how important is it for people to move into an immersive setting in order to heal?
I think that is hugely important, to take yourself away from everything that's familiar for you, because it offers an opportunity to actually change some patterning pretty quickly, because the familiar is not constantly reminding you of who you were, and you can start to live more into who you are really yearning to be without that constant reflection. But we've both been having a lot of success with doing immersive experiences. I've been doing immersive week-long experiences with people in their home, practicing with me twice a day, and just seeing how dedicated practice and intention and community support, maybe not live community support like in the same space and time, but community support, it's been huge to see people's transformation happening within their own homes, just coming from their willingness and their commitment and their desire to change, and then having some powerful experiences, having a community to reflect those positive experiences, and then having the discussion about how to sustain that and maintain that within your own environment, and actually how powerful that's been for people. So I've really enjoyed exploring another dimension of teaching in this time. I've taught online for many years, but to be able to teach live right into somebody's home and feel the impact of that, and to feel the accountability that comes when people get to show up to you live. And then also the subtlety of connection that can be felt. And it doesn't matter if somebody's in Australia or Europe or Canada or even the United States or South America, that people can feel one another in that space. And to me, what that helps us to do as individuals and then collectively is to start to feel how interconnected we all are. That we can feel each other's hearts when we're in such disparate places and feel each other's united intention. I think it's so powerful. It opens us up to really the acknowledgement that we are all connected in this world, and that if we do the work to shift our frequency and vibration, and we start to, emit that out into the unified field, and there's a bunch of other people doing that too, we're actually doing some pretty huge work in that.
Mm-hmm.
When we shift our own frequency, we're subtly influencing everybody's frequency, and that's what I've been feeling with these immersive experiences with people, from their homes. And it's exciting to me because what I always wanted to do was lead people through transformative experiences. So now this is another way, and it makes it available for those people who maybe cannot cannot afford to go away to Costa Rica. And so it enables, I think we've both been using a lot of sliding scale options, which means that it still works for us and our time, but it makes the practices available. Doesn't matter on what socioeconomic scale you come from. There's a window here where you can join in and have the experience. So I'm kind of excited about everything that's happening right now.
Yeah, that's very cool. I love that.
So,
Tommy, you look like you want to say something.
well, I would, everything Kia said, I echo. I'm in the world of recovery, from addiction. And I just want to just express that even with the digital interface between us, recovery can be transmitted. We've seen it. We're seeing it all the time. It's remarkable. It really happens. It's the same thing that Kia is talking about, and about a transformational process, and it is possible. It's more than possible. It's probable for anybody who really, really wants to show up. So it's a very exciting time if you think about it. We never would have known this to this extent if not for COVID. We wouldn't, maybe eventually somewhere, but we would never have come to this understanding that these kinds of experiences and teachings can be made available to almost anybody, much less expensively, much more access for people. So that's a really incredible thing. Kia has an amazing 40-day program beginning online that people should learn about at her website, kiamiller.com. I just want to shamelessly say something.
Yes, please do.
Incredible. I already know what it's going to be. It's going to be amazing. And my only regret is that right while she's doing that, I'm offering a program of my own, which you can learn about at Recovery 2.0. Our website's r20.com. And we've got all kinds of offerings, definitely into the end of the year and all throughout the year. So we're going to keep showing up with our full heart and energy, and we also, of course, we look forward to a time when we can all unite again in a physical, face-to-face way for hugs and practice and the human touch, which is obviously irreplaceable. We recognize all that, and we're very, I just say for myself, I'm very heartened by the directions and some of the decisions our country is making now, and I'm hopeful that we can move in the direction of greater health and greater truth, and I believe that we're going to be able to solve some of the biggest problems facing us, so that we can actually come back together. And I can't wait, and we can't wait to hang with you guys. You know,
Yes.
I've said to you many times that I want to roughhouse with your children. It's
They're
ready.
looking forward to it.
I really feel like I can take them, but I'm not sure.
Well, they can break blocks now. So
That's right. They're in karate
they're in
now.
karate. They've been training.
I stand no chance against those kids. I already know. My
Especially in
stamina
their
is
carnage
not
venom
what
suits.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Yeah. So I have a question for the two of you as we close the talk. What is one wish or one hope that you have for each other in this lifetime?
My wish for Tommy is that he is, you know, that he realizes his heart's desires. I think that, you know, the creative ambition that he has, that he can really realize that. And yeah.
Naturally, my hope for Kia is the same. Specifically, my hope for Kia is that she becomes, in her own, by her own words and definitions, she becomes fully realized in this life. Whatever that means for her as an individual, full realization. Yes?
Ditto.
Yes. I'm wide open to that.
Oh, I love it.
So, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. And for whatever reason, if it doesn't happen, you can do better next time.
Absolutely.
But I have full faith that it's already happening, and no doubt you're going to get there. So we're so grateful to both of you. You're big mentors, and we love you both so much. We feel blessed to be able to share with you today, and I can't wait for people to tune in and listen to these messages, because you know, I think it's easy to present yourself as, I got it all figured out. I mean, you take care of your body, you take care of the people that you take care of, and you show up the way that you do. And it's easy for people to see like, oh, like they got it all figured out. But this is why we wanted to do these podcasts, because we recognize that these are the people that really need to share the message of like, you know, you are enough, and it's going to be challenging, and you're going to go through it, and you're going to be better for it. And so, you know, the way that you guys shared today, that vulnerability and the authenticity is just, I mean,
Honesty.
Yeah, I mean, we would expect nothing else from you guys,
Yeah.
of course, but it's just so nice to hear that, because if we're all going through something similar, you know, there's a way through, and there's an elevated, I think, way to go through in a way that's where we're honoring ourselves more deeply. So.